In January 1901, Superintendent Robert Muirhead filed his official report on the disappearance of the Flannan Isles keepers. Attached to that report, referenced but never fully reproduced in public records, were transcriptions of the Lighthouse log's final entries, December 12 through 15, 1900. Those entries describe things Muirhead's official conclusion cannot account for. The principal keeper, James Ducat, a man with 20 years of service, described by colleagues as unflappable, wrote on December 12 that Marshall had been crying and that MacArthur had been praying since dawn. Ducat had been keeping lighthouses since 1880. In 20 years, he had never once noted a colleague's emotional state in an official log. He noted it 3 times in 4 days. I know what you're thinking. Storms do strange things to men in isolation. And you're right, they do. But the log from December 12 also notes the weather as moderate. Not storm conditions. Moderate. Before we read every entry these men left behind, in the order they wrote them without editorial comment, do me a favor. Subscribe if you're here for primary sources over speculation. Drop a comment telling me, would you have taken that posting? 3 men, 1 lighthouse, 32 kilometers from the nearest land. Where are you watching from? Right. The log opens on December 7, 1900. Everything appears normal. For a while. December 7, 1900. Principal keeper James Ducat, December 7, 1900. Relief boat departed 0800 hours. Weather: clear, wind light from the northwest, seas running moderate. Visibility good to the mainland horizon. Lamp trimmed and operational. Clockwork mechanism wound. Fresnel lens cleaned with chamois. No scratches noted. Prisms intact. Paraffin reserves. 14 barrels, sufficient for 6 weeks at current burn rate. Coal supply adequate. Provisions checked and stowed. Tinned beef, oatmeal, biscuits, tea, saltfish. Medical kit complete. Station is in good order. Marshall has settled well into the watch rotation. He is a capable man, if somewhat given to complaint about the wind. MacArthur knows these islands as well as any man alive. He grew up on Lewis, 15 miles east of here, and he moves on the rock paths like he was born to them. Between the 3 of us, I have no concerns about the coming weeks. One matter to note before I close this entry. At the landing stage this morning, before the relief boat departed, one of the Lewis boatmen, an older man, Gaelic speaker, I did not catch his name, approached me separately from the others. He spoke in English carefully, as if he had prepared the words. He said the islands had been, and I record his exact phrasing here as it struck me, restless this season. He said the birds had been wrong. He said we should keep the chapel ruins to our right when we walked the western path, never to our left. He said we should not answer if we heard our names called from the direction of the sea. I thanked him for his concern. I did not record his warning in the official log. I am recording it here because I am a thorough man, and thorough men record everything. The light is operational. The station is secure. We begin our watch. J. Ducat. Principal Keeper, December 9, 1900. First Assistant Thomas Marshall, December 9, 1900. Morning watch. Wind backing northwest to west overnight. Freshening. Barometer 29.4 and falling. Rain since 0300. Lamp maintained through the night without incident. I took the 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. watches. MacArthur the 9 p.m. Ducat inspected the lens at dawn and found it satisfactory. I am writing this supplemental entry in the personal record because Ducat suggested we each maintain one alongside the official log. He said it helped on long postings. I think he means it gives a man something to do when the wind won't stop. The wind here is unlike anything on the mainland. It doesn't gust, it presses. Constant, flat like a hand against your chest. You lean into it walking to the foghorn housing, and when it drops for a moment you nearly fall forward. Marshall from Edinburgh. Falling over in a calm. That would give Ducat something to note. MacArthur seems perfectly at ease. He ate his porridge this morning and read his Bible and went to sleep for his off-watch as if we were at a shore station with a pub nearby. I asked him this evening about what the boatman said to Ducat at the landing. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said the old man was right about the birds. I asked him what he meant. He said look out the east window in the morning and count the gannets on the rock shelf. He said there should be 40, 50 birds this time of year. He said if there were fewer than 10, we should pay attention. I looked out the east window before writing this entry. I counted 7. I told myself it was the weather. Birds move ahead of weather. I'm sure that's all it is. T. Marshal, First Assistant December 11th, 1900, Occasional Keeper Donald McArthur December 11th. Evening. I do not write often. Ducat writes enough for 3 men and Marshall writes enough for 2. But tonight I want to put something down. I have worked the Hebridean stations for 11 years. Iskir. Ruba Mòr. 2 winters on Scaravore in weather that would turn a younger man's hair white. I know island sounds. I know what the wind does in a geo, how it funnels through the rock channels and comes out the other end sounding like voices, like words almost, like something trying to speak through a shape it doesn't quite fit. I know that sound. What I heard last night from the direction of the west landing was not that sound. Came at 0200 during my watch. The lamp was burning steady. Barometer unchanged. Sea moderate. And from the west, from the cliff path above the lower landing stage, something called. Not a word. Not quite. But shaped like one. Shaped like my name. I went to the window. There was nothing on the path. The beam swept across on its rotation and showed me rock and grass and the iron handrail going down toward the geo and nothing else. I did not wake the others. I am writing this down because the boatman at the landing told Ducat not to answer if we heard our names from the sea. I did not answer, but I heard it. D. MacArthur December 12, 1900. Principal Keeper James Ducat December 12, 1900. I am going to write this entry carefully because I am not certain what the appropriate official language is for what I am observing and I do not wish to submit an inaccurate record to the board. Weather moderate. Wind west-northwest. Force 4. Barometer 29.1. Steady. Seas running moderate to rough offshore. Manageable at the east landing. Lamp trimmed 0900. Mechanism wound. Light operational. That is the official record for December 12th. What follows is supplemental and personal. Marshall wept during his morning watch. I discovered this when I came up to relieve him at 0500 and found him at the lantern room window with his back to me. His shoulders were moving in a way I recognized from my own worst nights at sea 30 years ago. I said nothing. I took my position. He descended without speaking. I have known Thomas Marshall for 2 years and I have never seen him in anything other than complete professional composure. He is 28 years old and he has his mother's photograph in his coat pocket and I saw him check it 4 times yesterday. At breakfast he said he had not slept. I asked why. He said he kept hearing something on the west path. I asked what. He said he didn't know. He said it sounded like his brother. His brother, I know from previous conversations, died in a fishing accident off Arbroath in 1896. MacArthur said nothing during breakfast. He ate his porridge and read his Bible and did not look up. After breakfast, I walked the west path myself. The path runs from the station along the cliff to the upper west landing, where the iron crane sits above the geo. The path is approximately 200 yards. I walked it in full morning light, wind at my back, and I will record exactly what I observed. The grass on both sides of the path had been pressed flat. Not by foot traffic, by pressure from above, as if something very large and very heavy had rested on it during the night. The pattern ran in a rough line from the cliff edge toward the station. Could have been the wind. Wind does remarkable things to coastal grass. I am recording it because I am a thorough man. The light is operational. J. Ducat, Principal Keeper December 13th, 1900. First Assistant Thomas Marshall December 13th. I owe this record an honest account of last night, so I am going to write one. At approximately 0130 I was on watch in the lantern room. The light was turning. The mechanism was wound. Everything was as it should be. I was at the logbook making my standard notation when I became aware that the sound of the wind had changed. I want to be precise about this because I am a precise man and I do not want to write something I cannot stand behind. The wind did not stop. It continued at the same force, the same direction. But the sound it made changed. It had been, as it always is here, a low, flat, pressing sound against the glass. It became something with more shape to it. More intention, I want to say, though I recognize how that sounds from a man who prides himself on rational thinking. I looked at the window. There was condensation on the inside of the glass from the paraffin heat. In that condensation, in the pattern the wind was making against the outer pane, I saw a shape. I want to record it accurately. It was a handprint, a large one, fingers spread, palm flat against the glass, pressed from the outside. We are 31 meters above the sea at the lantern room level. I told myself it was a seabird, a gannet or a large skua, wings spread, hitting the glass and leaving a mark. I told myself this for approximately 40 minutes while I stood at the opposite side of the lantern room and did not take my eyes off that window. The handprint did not move. At 0230 I went down and woke Ducat and showed him the entry I was writing. He read it. He went up to the lantern room himself and came back down 20 minutes later. He said nothing. He put the kettle on. He sat at the table and looked at the wall. I asked him what he had seen when he looked at the window. He said, nothing. The glass was clear. T. Marshall, First Assistant, December 14th, 1900. Donald McArthur, December 14th. Before dawn. I have been sitting with this for an hour deciding whether to write it. I am going to write it. Last night I dreamed of my mother. She has been dead for 12 years. In the dream she was standing on the west path below the crane housing, and she was calling my name the way she called it when I was a boy on Lewis Domnall with the Gaelic shape to it, the way nobody has called me since she died. I walked toward her on the path. The geo was below me to the left, the sea in it black and moving. She kept calling. I woke before I reached her. I am a grown man of 40 years and I am writing this in a Lighthouse log and I know how it reads. I am writing it anyway because I believe in being honest about what this island is doing to us and I believe the boatman at the landing knew what he was talking about and I believe we should not go near the west landing today. I told Ducat this at breakfast. He listened. He is a fair man. He said he would note my concern. He also said the crane housing at the west landing needs inspection after the weather of the past 3 days and one of us needs to go down. Marshall volunteered. I think he wanted to prove something to himself. I think the handprint, which he told me about this morning quietly while Ducat was in the tower, has been sitting in his chest since 0130 and he wants to walk it out of himself. I asked Ducat to send me instead. He sent Marshall. Marshall came back inside 40 minutes later. He would not say what he had seen at the West Landing. He has not spoken since. D. McArthur, December 15th, 1900. Principal Keeper James Ducat, December 15th, 1900. 2,100 hours. Official record. Lamp trimmed. Mechanism wound. Light operational. Wind westerly. Force 5. Freshening. Barometer. 28.7 and falling. Seas building offshore. Supplemental. Marshall has not spoken in 36 hours. He sits at the table or lies in his bunk and he looks at the middle distance and he breathes and that is the entirety of what he does. He has not eaten since the morning of the 14th. He has not looked at his mother's photograph. It is still in his coat pocket and the coat is on its hook and he has not touched it. McArthur has been praying since this morning. Quietly, in Gaelic, the old words, I recognize the rhythm of them from my years in the Hebridean stations, though I have never learned the language. He showed me something this afternoon that he had found on the west path, in the grass above the geo. I am going to record it here because I do not know what else to do with it. It was a tooth. Large. Not a seabird's. Not a seal's. Not anything I could match in 20 years of coastal work. McArthur held it in his palm and looked at it for a long time and then he put it in his pocket and said one word in Gaelic that I did not understand. I asked him what the word meant. He said called. It is 2,100 hours. I have just trimmed the lamp. The mechanism is wound. The light will turn through the night. I can hear something on the west path. It is not the wind. Marshall just stood up from the table. He is putting on his coat. He is walking to the door. McArthur is already on his feet. Entry ends. No further entries in the official log. No further entries in the personal records. The clockwork mechanism ran until the oil was exhausted, approximately December 17, 1900. The light was dark for 9 days before the relief vessel arrived on December 26. Written December 28, 1900, 2 days after the discovery, December 28, 1900. I have been asked by Superintendent Muirhead to write a full account of what I found on Eilean Mòr on the 26th while my memory is still complete. I will do that. I will be as precise as I am able. The relief vessel Hesperus reached Eilean Mòr at approximately 1,130 hours on December 26th. The lighthouse had been dark since approximately the 17th by our reckoning, 9 days. Captain Harvey had attempted signals from the vessel on approach. Flags, horn, whistle. No response from the island. This was the first indication that something was wrong. I was put ashore alone in the small boat. This was standard procedure. One keeper goes ahead to confirm the station is manned before the full relief party lands. I climbed the path from the east landing to the station. The gate to the compound was open. Not broken, simply open and swinging slightly in the wind. The door to the keeper's house was also open. I will record the interior exactly as I found it. The kitchen table was set for a meal. 3 bowls. 3 cups. The porridge pot was on the stove, cold, and I want to be careful here because I know how this reads, not hardened. Porridge left for 9 days in an unheated stone building in December becomes solid. Stone hard, dry at the edges, shrunken from the pot walls. What was in that pot was soft. Cold, but soft, the way porridge is soft 4 or 5 hours after cooking, not 9 days. I have thought about that porridge every day since. 2 of the 3 chairs were pushed back from the table as if their occupants had stood suddenly. The 3rd chair was knocked completely onto its side on the floor. The oilskin coats were on their hooks, 2 of them. The 3rd hook was empty. 1 coat missing from 3 men means 1 man dressed to go outside. The other 2 left without their coats. In December, on an exposed Atlantic island, in building C's, I climbed the tower. The lamp had burned out, oil exhausted, wick charred. The mechanism had run down and stopped. The logbook was open on the stand to the December 15th entry. I read it standing there in the cold lantern room with the dead lamp above me and the Atlantic below me on all sides, and I will tell you honestly that I did not finish reading it in the tower. I took the book down to the kitchen and sat at the table with the overturned chair beside me, and I read the rest of it there. When I finished, I went back outside and signaled the Hesperus to send the full party ashore. I did not tell Captain Harvey what I had read. I gave him the log. I said the men were gone. He asked me what I thought had happened. I told him I did not know. That was not entirely true. J. Mòr, Relief Keeper, Northern Lighthouse Board, January 1901. The following passages are excerpted from the formal inquiry report. Passages marked omitted in original indicate sections referenced in the document index but absent from the surviving copy held at the National Records of Scotland. The reason for their omission has not been formally explained. Page 3, paragraph 2. The damage observed at the West Landing was considerable and consistent with wave action of exceptional force. The iron crane, rated to withstand standard Atlantic swells, had been displaced from its mounting. A rope box weighing approximately 1 ton had been moved 40 feet from its original position. Iron stanchions were bent at an angle suggesting lateral pressure from a large body of water. The West Landing sits at an elevation of approximately 110 feet above mean sea level. Page 7, paragraph 1. The condition of the keeper's log was examined in detail. Entries through December 13th are consistent with standard recording practice and show no irregularity in content or tone. Entries for December 14th and 15th, while containing supplemental personal material of an unusual nature, do not, in this examiner's opinion, indicate psychological disturbance beyond that which prolonged isolation in adverse conditions might reasonably produce. The supplemental entries have been noted and filed separately. Pages 8 through 11. Omitted in original page 12, paragraph 4. It is the conclusion of this inquiry that the three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and McArthur, were lost to the sea, most probably during an inspection of the West Landing in conditions of exceptional wave activity. The precise sequence of events cannot be determined from available evidence. The matter is considered closed. Handwritten margin note, page 12, in ink different from the report body, author unidentified. The supplemental entries for December 12th through 15th are not consistent with wave anxiety. Marshall was an experienced keeper. Ducat had 20 years of service. Men like these do not write what these men wrote because they are afraid of the sea. They wrote it because they were afraid of something else. This report does not say what that something else was. I am not certain the report should, but someone ought to. Collected by Alexander Carmichael, Outer Hebrides. Estimated pre-1890, translated from the original Gaelic by the Hebridean Historical Society. 1962. The following passage concerns the islands called Eilean Mòr and its surrounding islets, known collectively to Hebridean Gaels as the Seven Hunters. It was recorded from an unnamed Lewis elder and appears in Carmichael's unpublished field notes. The Seven Hunters do not belong to the living. They belong to those who were taken from the sea and never returned to it. Every man drowned in the Minch Passage, every woman taken by the tide, every child lost from a fishing boat, they go to the Seven Hunters. Not to rest, to wait. They do not hate the living who come to the islands. Hatred requires desire, and the waiting dead have exhausted all desire. What they feel, if feeling is the right word for what the dead feel, is recognition. They recognize the shape of the living, the shape of breath, the shape of warmth. And they call to that shape the way a starving man calls toward a fire he can see but cannot reach. They call in voices the living know. A mother's voice, a brother's voice, the voice of anyone the living man has loved and lost. This is not cruelty. The dead do not know cruelty any more than they know kindness. They simply call in the only language available to them, the language of what the living man most wants to hear. If the living man answers, he walks toward the voice. If he walks toward the voice on the Seven Hunters, he walks toward the cliff. There is no malice in this. The sea requires balance. For every living man who works the water holds a debt. The Seven Hunters are where the debt is kept. Do not go there alone. Do not go there at night. Do not answer to your name from the direction of the sea. And if you must go, leave before the dark comes in. 3 documents. 81 years between the oldest and the most recent. Written by men who never met each other, in 2 different languages, for 3 entirely different purposes. They describe the same thing. The Carmichael oral history, collected before the Lighthouse was built, before any keeper had set foot on Eilean Mòr, describes exactly the mechanism that Ducat's entries document across 4 days in December 1900. Voices calling in the language of the dead. Voices shaped like the people the living most want to hear. Marshall hearing his dead brother from the west path. McArthur dreaming his dead mother calling him in Gaelic toward the geo. Ducat, experienced, formal, professional Ducat, recording in his private log that he could hear something on the west path on the night of December 15th that was not the wind. And then Marshall standing up from the table, and putting on his coat, and walking to the door. The Gaelic elder who gave Carmichael that account did not know about James Ducat, did not know about Thomas Marshall or Donald McArthur or the lighthouse that would be built on Eilean Mòr 9 years after his words were recorded. He described a mechanism that had been operating on the Seven Hunters for as long as his people had memory of the islands. He described it plainly, without drama, the way you describe a natural law to someone who has not encountered it yet. The sea requires balance. The Seven Hunters are where the debt is kept. Muirhead's inquiry concluded wave action. That conclusion required a wave of sufficient force to displace a 1-ton rope box at 110 feet above sea level, kill or sweep away 3 experienced keepers, and leave their porridge soft on the stove. No meteorological record from December 15th, 1900 documents storm conditions of that magnitude in the Flannan Isles area. The seas were building as Ducat's final entry notes. Force 5. Freshening. Significant. Not extraordinary. The handwritten margin note on page 12 of Muirhead's report, written by someone who read the supplemental entries and understood that the official conclusion did not fit them, was never followed up. Whoever wrote it did not sign their name. They wrote it and filed it and presumably went home and did not sleep well and did not raise the matter again. That is what institutions do with things that do not fit. They file them in the margin and move on. The lighthouse on Eilean Mòr still stands. It was automated in September 1971. No keepers required, no human presence necessary, the light turning on its own schedule through the Atlantic dark. The Northern Lighthouse Board maintains it remotely. Nobody sleeps there. Nobody trims the wick or winds the clockwork or logs the 1 a.m. watch anymore. The west path is still there. The iron handrail descending to the geo is still there, replaced and maintained by the board. The crane housing has been rebuilt twice since 1900. The chapel ruins of St. Flannan, where the Lewis Gale said you must circle clockwise, never counterclockwise, where you must keep the ruins to your right on the western approach, those are still there too. Mostly unvisited. The tourist materials for the Outer Hebrides mention the Flannan Isles disappearance as a historical curiosity. They mention the lighthouse. They do not mention the chapel. They do not mention what the elder told Carmichael about the debt the sea keeps on the 7 hunters. Joseph Moore transferred to a mainland posting in January 1901 and never worked a remote island station again. He lived until 1941. His granddaughter said he would not discuss the Flannan Isles. Not once in 40 years. She said that when storms came in off the Atlantic, he would go to the interior room of whatever house he was in, the room with no windows facing west, and he would stay there until the weather passed. He never explained why. He didn't need to. The log explains it.